Have you ever heard the old saying that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure? That's especially true when it comes to your farm tractor. Every farm should practice preventative maintenance. So every time before I use my tractor, I'll go through a list of 4 main things that helps keep this tractor operational for our farm here. One of the most basic things you can do before you drive your tractor is just a simple walk around. You know, this tractor, like most tractors, has 4 basic fluids that it holds. It has water and coolant that keeps the tractor cool. It has engine oil that lubricates the engine when it's running. It has diesel, or some tractors have gasoline or maybe even propane, that fuels the tractor and provides power. And then my tractor uses hydraulic fluid, not only for the front end bucket, but also for other hydraulic operations, in addition to the transmission oil. And so just by doing a walk around every day, what I'm looking for is I'm looking underneath the tractor and making sure that nothing's leaked underneath it since the last time I used it. And if you happen to see a leak, that's a good sign you may have a problem and you may want to investigate where the leak came from. The next thing I look at are the tires. And I'm asking myself, do the tires look properly inflated? If they don't, I'm going to add air to them. And if they went flat unexpectedly, I'm going to figure that there's something in the tire, and so I've got to get that checked out as well. One of the things that I do that I learned from my dad, who used to be a truck driver, is I'll oftentimes kick the back tires, because these back tires are fairly rigid, and so even though they may not have any air in it, it may appear that they do, and when you drive them, they'll pop off the rim and the bead will come loose. So after I've done my walk around, the next thing I'll do is actually pop the hood on the engine and check a few things out there. So one of the first things I'll look for is I'll get down here by the battery and make sure the battery cables are connected well, make sure there's no corrosion that showed up overnight, and make sure the battery's still upright. Many times when you're driving a tractor, especially over rough terrain, if your battery's not strapped down good, the battery may pop up and fall on its side, which is going to cause you a lot more problems as those corrosive elements within the battery leak out on your tractor. And then I'm just going to go through here and look for things like pop the radiator cap off. Make sure that this is always cool before you do that. Don't do this when it's hot. And I'll look down in the cap and see that it's got plenty of coolant in there, so I'm good to go there. Then I'll walk around and pull the dipstick from the tractor just to make sure it's got plenty of engine oil in it. Check the diesel. Diesel's pretty easy to check because it actually has a gauge on the panel that I can check. And then walk around to the back and then pull the dipstick here on the transmission and hydraulic oil and make sure that I've got plenty there. Again, if you don't see any leaks when you do your first walk around, the chances that you've lost any fluid from the last time you used your tractor are pretty limited, but it's still a good idea to always check. And then the third thing I'll do when I'm practicing my initial tractor maintenance is I'll do a walk around and check all the fittings of the hydraulic hoses just to make sure they're tight. So you can see here there's a cluster of hoses, and this is where the hydraulic hoses actually connect. So I'm just going to just wiggle those things, make sure they're tight, walk around, even wiggle the hoses, feel the hoses on the tractor, make sure that they're firm and that they're not about to burst. And then I'll even check these hard connections, make sure that they're in good working order. Checking the hose fittings each time is a good practice to stay in as well, because again, we're going from the premise that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If we can find these problems early, we can prevent them from becoming bigger problems. And then about once a month, I'll get my grease gun out. And if you've used tractors a lot, you know what these things are, but if you look closely, everywhere where there's a pivot point where metal may rub on metal, you'll see these little things are called grease zerks, Z-E-R-K-S. And this is just where you use a grease gun, put on the grease zerk, and you can pump a little grease into these joints that need lubrication. Now, maintenance schedules vary on every tractor. On my tractor, I try to grease everything about once a month just to make sure it stays in good working order. In my opinion, it's better to have grease always in them than to run it dry a little bit. And then the fifth thing you can do is keep track of it all. Just the other day, I looked in the app store on my iPhone and I found that there was a couple of tractor maintenance apps. And those tractor maintenance apps, one requires a subscription, the other one doesn't. The other one's pretty basic, but it allows you to log the parts number you use whenever you're changing the air filter or oil filter on your tractor. And it also logs the date of when you might have changed the oil or serviced your tractor. And that's important because you can actually keep up with the hours and when you did the service. You can put them in your scheduling program, and you can set it yourself up, custom alerts to remind you when it's time to change the oil, when it's time to change the air filter, when it's time to just do a general service of your tractor to keep it in top working order. And that's really it. You know, it took us a couple of minutes to do this walk around, but in reality, if I wasn't trying to talk my way through it, it wouldn't take that long at all. It takes about a minute each time I walk out to use my tractor to walk around it, check the fluids in it, just do a check of the hydraulic hoses, and then once a month I grease the grease zerks, and it really doesn't take that long at all. But I feel like that minute I invest in checking those things is going to save me a lot of trouble in the end.